And it started by, telling us about Job, and then it said that, Satan went to God, and God told him, have you observed my servant Job? And he allowed Satan to come into Job's life. God let the hedges down around Job and let Satan, take his whole family from him. And then he turned around and let Satan take his health from him. And, Job, through all of that, still worshiped God and never said anything bad about God. So we left off last week at the very end of chapter 2. We went through 2 chapters last week. We seen Job's wife, why she got to stick around, because she told Job to just curse God and die. And then we seen Job's 3 friends come on the scene, and they stayed with him for 7 days, sitting in the dung pile while Job scraped all of his bulls and stuff with a piece of broken pottery. So chapter 3 starts off, and it starts like this. Chapter 3 is going to start it, and it's Job's going to say something. See, this little bubble is Job talking. And then the friend 1 is going to say something. And then Job's going to say something. And then the friend 2 is going to say something. And it's going to go back and forth. And it goes back and forth, friend 1, 2, and 3, and then Job leaves off again saying something else. And then we'll see another guy come in, and I'll write down something else up here. But this whole talking back in between Job and his friends goes from chapter 3 all the way to chapter 28. And we got to remember, his friends are under the assumption, and I wrote it right here, and this is the cause and effect thing, the human action. If you're wise and you're good, you'll have success and you'll be rewarded. And that's how they thought. This is God's justice side, this is human action side. Evil and stupid, if you're being stupid and mean and ugly, you're going to have disaster and punishment coming your way. So that's the way that these friends understand God. That's how they understand them. We'll see later on that God rebukes them all, and you kind of take what everybody says with a grain of salt, because some of it's truth, but some of it's observation. Some, even like we see, people follow God and God blesses them, but you also see people that have never walked in a church and they seem to be blessed. You got to remember that they're under this big assumption. That's how they feel. That's how they learned, and that's kind of how we feel most of the time, which ain't always the case. And Job being a case in point. Chapter 3 and 4 is where we're going to go today, and hopefully we can get through that. I don't know if we're going to go word for word all the way from chapter 3 to 28. I don't know if we're going to go word for word. It just seems, it's going to be redundant because it's going to be a lot of the same thing over and over. And this is all Hebrew poetry. The poetry like we nowadays have rhyme and rhythm to a poetry, and it makes sense and it sounds good. Their poetry, and I said it last week, is more of a parallelism. You'll normally hear them say the same thing over and over again, or say in different ways they'll say it over again, or they'll say something and then say an opposing thing to it, an opposite of it. You'll get the gist of the poetry in just a minute when we start talking. Huh? Yeah, we're recording, just regular recording, not videoing it. But we're going to start in 3. And you got to remember that Job just lost all of his stuff, all of his family. His friends are sitting there with him. He sit for 7 days. They probably hadn't ate anything. They're just sitting in a dung heap. We all know what that is. Probably on the outskirts of town. And, these are pretty good friends. When he was rich and everything was going good, think about how many friends he had. But when everything went downhill, only 3 people showed up. So You got to know that they're good friends.
Yeah.
And what they're going to say to him seems like good advice to him. Seems like the truth to them. And this is just you got to think about what you say to people, especially if they're in hurt. Chapter 3, verse 1. After this, opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. He didn't curse God, though. He cursed the day. His day means the day he was born. And Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there was a man-child conceived. So he's, wishing that he never been born. For let the day be darkness, let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for the night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come into the numbers of the month. He's saying, and I don't know if any of y'all have been to the point to where you were so upset about something that you wish you'd never been born. But that's what he's to this point. I wished I'd never been born. It'd been better off if this day didn't even exist, the day that I was, born or conceived. and you got to remember, Job has lost everything. Like I said, he's very upset, and you go through a really big roller coaster of emotions when you are upset. 9. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of day. So he's saying he didn't want the day that he was conceived to exist. 10, because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrows from mine eyes. So he's saying if he'd have never been born, he wouldn't have went through all this sorrow. 11, why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? He's saying, why wasn't I stillborn? Why did the knees prevent me? Or why the breast that I should suck? And the knees part is part of when the child is born. It's put in the lap of the father. They would have put him in the father's lap. That's part of that, what he's saying there. If he was, I looked it up because I was like, what's knees got to do with anything? 13, for now should I have lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. With the kings and the counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves. He's saying if I'd have died young, or if I'd have been stillborn, I would have been at peace with all the people of past in their graves or whatever. 15, or with the princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver, or as a hidden, untimely birth I had not been, as infants which never saw light. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. He wants to die, so he ain't got to worry, and he ain't got to be, troubled from, being, the wicked don't have to trouble him anymore. See, when you die, you don't have to go through all the pain and the suffering and the trouble, and you don't have to worry about the devil no more. That's what he's wishing for. 18, there the prisoners rest together, for hear not the voices of the opposers. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. The servant being free from his master, back then, if they had slaves, could you imagine having to wake up and work until dark, and then all you do is work for nothing? Yeah, I could imagine if you was one of them kind of people that had to work for nothing, you'd be begging for death. And that's what he's saying there. He wants to be resting with all these different people because he's in such torment.
But, Brother TJ.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we go back to number 11? I know I didn't want to interrupt you, but now, reread that. Because it's saying, when it says, why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Now,
Why did you not die?
we're not born with the ghost. We're not born with the Holy Ghost.
They're talking about spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're not born with spirit. We're born, we're not born. We don't come out of the womb and be sinless.
A child comes out.
I think it's more of a saying of when somebody gives up the ghost, they're dead, they're dying.
He wanted to die at birth. Why would he
It
not
says,
die? Mine says, why did I not die at birth?
But the ghost.
And why did I not perish when I came from the womb?
Yeah, mine says
I
the ghost
died.
too.
So,
I think it was King James' way of saying die, giving up the ghost.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That is a good question though, because you don't receive the Holy Ghost until you get saved.
When he died on the cross, it's when our kids are born, they're not born sinless because you have to say, don't do that.
That's right.
I mean, we have to teach them to be good.
Yep, they learn how to be bad all on their own.
That right there, maybe you got a book or something, that maybe give you something to.
Yeah. If you go to a newer translation, I bet you they don't use that word. It's that 400-year-old word.
King James is the only one that uses giving up the ghost as death.
Yeah.
It's because it's the 400-year-old language. It don't
When
actually.
he comes out of bed, he don't come out of bed with Holy Ghost.
I bet you if you look at it in the other way, the ghost would probably be capitalized if it meant the part of the Trinity.
It's part of
Well,
the
it
scripture.
says give, and give meaning expire. So perish, I don't know, that number 11 has just got me, I'm gonna have to back up.
Expire means to pass on, to be
I
dead.
know what expire means, y'all still don't, y'all not getting what
I get what
It
you-
don't say-
You talking about, you thinking that he's talking about giving up the ghost as far as he's
Okay,
filled
when
with the
I
Holy
had
Ghost.
my baby, he didn't say, well, Mama, I should've gave up the ghost.
Well, read that one thing, that last part right there, let me explain something.
Okay. I've had it marked for 16 years in this Bible.
But I can explain
Yeah.
the translation on this one,
Uh-huh.
because if you see the word ghost, it's not in capital letters,
Right.
it's in small letters, it don't have the Holy Ghost in
No,
front
it
of it.
don't say Holy.
It's not talking about the Holy Ghost. The King James Version is talking about when they give up the ghost, that means they passed on, they died.
Okay, I got you.
But it didn't say nothing about the Holy Ghost.
You got to take it in context with the rest of it. It's poetry. So they're going to say, he says that he wants to die like, 50 times in a row right here.
In all different ways.
In all different ways.
Yeah, in different times.
Oh, yeah, I
But
know.
if you consider the Holy Ghost,
This
is to
book
have
of
Holy
Job.
Ghost is to be.
That was God's way of testing who is his true believers.
Absolutely.
This man right here is my favorite book. And I've always had that number 11 marked for all these years, and I still can't. But y'all broke it down a little bit.
Hopefully you can get some
A
answers
little bit
from
more now.
I do the same thing. Don't feel bad because I'll get hung up.
He said seek.
I'll get hung up on one verse and I'll be there and I'll go back to it and it won't ever make sense.
Just remember, If a word in the middle of a sentence has got a capital letter by it, that's from God.
There you go. And you know what, that's in this, in the front of this right here, and that's what I need to read this, okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My book divides it up. Verse 20 gives a heading that Job longs for death. I mean, the first part of this seems like that would have been sufficient, but it's going to keep going. 20, wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hidden treasure. What's he saying there? He's longing for death to the point to where he's digging for it like it's a hidden treasure, pretty much.
Well, that's eternal life.
And the other one's talking about eternal life. No, I don't know. 22, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Some people, when they're on their deathbed, if they've lived a long life and they are suffering, you can tell them it is okay. You can go home to be with God. You can go home to be with the Lord. And you can rejoice exceedingly and be glad when they can find the grave. And that's what he's saying. He wants to find that grave so he can, he can rejoice. I can't imagine what Job's going through. I mean, lose one kid, lose a parent. I've lost both my parents. I ain't never lost a kid.
Yeah.
But to lose 10 kids, to lose a fortune, lose all your friends and family, and then for the one person that's still alive tell you to curse God and die.
All them balls.
And all of the
all
yes.
down his body, and he's just laying there, just all sored up. Oh my goodness.
It probably would make you want to beg for death. You got to remember though, Job didn't see chapter 1 and 2. He didn't know all this was happening for a reason. It just happened. He didn't see that God's trying to.
His servant would not let him down. God knew it when he gave the devil the okay to do it, but you can't take his life. Didn't say nothing about his wife.
Job, I'm sure, didn't know that, 5,000 years from now we'd be reading his story. If he had, he probably would have took it a little better. So.
But at the end, you know what happened.
He still prevailed, didn't he? Where was we at?
Oh, I don't know that.
Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God hath hedged in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid is come unto me. It's the same thing over again. So he's saying the thing that I feared most is what's done happened to me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet troubled me. Did I say that right? So this is that poetry. It's hard to make sense of it. That was the end of chapter 3. And you see how it's laid out, chapter 3. We're fixing to get into Eliphaz. Is going to come back and talk to him. Now, friends like these, you definitely do not need enemies, okay? These guys pour it on him, and they really just let him have it. And they mean good, okay? They mean the best. They're trying to explain to Job why this is happening. But what the friends don't see is what happened in chapter 1 and 2. What the friends don't see is that Job is actually an innocent person, really just having a bad go at life right now.
God's got him under test.
Then Eliphaz, the Temanite, answered and said, If we essay to come commune with thee, wilt thou be received, or wilt thou be grieved? I'm sorry. But who can withhold himself from speaking? Behold, thou hast instructed many, and thou hast strengthened the weak hands. What he's telling Job is like, you have talked to people and you've instructed people and have strengthened weak people. And then he's going to go in and tell him, you could talk the talk, but you're not walking the walk right now. You want to say you're good at this and you can give people advice. I think we're going to have to read further. Thy words have upholden him that was fallen. This is part of him telling him. And thou hast strengthened the feeble knees. But now, he's saying you were able to talk this talk and help people and strengthen people and give them a pep talk and, get them through bad times. 5, but now it is come upon thee. It's happening to you. And thou faintest. It toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. He's saying you talk a big talk to your buddies when you help people out, but it happens to you now. You're fainting. You can't handle it. You're troubled about it. 6, is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and thy uprightness of thy ways? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? What is he telling him? He said, what I say? What did I mess up? Oh, I thought you said I missed something. Do you hear what he's saying? He says, he tells him all this stuff. It's fine. You can help people, but when it happens to you, you're wavering. You can't handle it. And then he goes, does God? He says, wherever perished being innocent. He said, does God, kill the innocent? Or where were the righteous cut off? He goes, does God cut off the righteous people? In other words, what he's telling Job here is like, you're messing up. Somewhere in your life, you ain't been doing right. This is why this is happening to you. That's what he's saying to him. 8, even as I have seen, he's saying now, I've observed this with my own 2 eyes. They that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. We always hear, you reap what you sow. Yeah, you do. You reap what you sow, but guess what? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't get what you sow. Sometimes it's just, the Bible says that the good shines, the sun shines on the just and the unjust, and the rain shines on the just and the unjust. So for the most part, you reap what you sow. But that's their thinking. That's why he's going at him. He's saying,
we need not to judge people that's going through something and say, oh, I wonder what they're doing.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's what these people are doing to Job.
Now, I did that years and years ago. I don't do that no more.
It's kind of like we talked about last night. It comes back to, makes me think of the association, guilty by association.
Yeah.
If you're hanging around the unjust, who's to say you're not going to catch the wrath that they're catching?
Right. Oh, yes.
Yours may not be as bad as theirs, but you're still going to catch.
Oh, yeah. That's why the Lord says if you're going to go somewhere to witness to somebody, it's witness and and get and brush them feet off or
That's like me, if I
whatever.
was to go over and grab the end of a loose wire, and he shocks me, but I grab you, and then it's gonna go through you, and if somebody
And then
grabs,
this is- and
it's
then
just
it's
gonna keep going.
yeah. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
So, I mean, that's what I think of when I think of, you know, when it says that they rain on the just and the unjust.
Yeah.
By the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils are they consumed. He's talking about the unrighteous people, the people that are sown iniquity, the evil folks. You know, God cuts them off and consumes them. And if we make it far enough, you know, Job will say something about this in just a minute. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The old lion perisheth for lack of prey, and the stout lion whelps are scattered about. The stout lion's whelps are scattered about. You know, I have no idea what that means. Anybody got a new translation?
The roaring lion speaks of wisdom.
So that's talking about wisdom.
Yeah, talking about wisdom. It's the voice of the fierce lion. And the teeth of the young lion are broken. The young lion represents strength. It could not deliver to the wicked. The young lion's teeth was broke, so it couldn't take the wisdom to the people.
All right, from this one, this is the New King James, it says, you know, the old lions perish for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. That's the New King James.
Oh, that makes more sense then. He's talking about his children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the wisdom, but he don't have the children to go out and spread the wisdom to the wicked.
Well, they're dead now. They perished. I wonder if he's actually talking about Job's children.
It said Job's children desire what they got.
Now, let's keep reading. 12. And a thing was secretly brought to me, and this is the guy, this is Eliphaz talking, he's saying that he's seen a vision. He says, now a thing was secretly brought to me, and mine ear received a little thereof in thoughts from the visions of the night. So he had a dream. When deep sleep fell on man, 14, fear came upon me and trembling, which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face. The hair of my flesh stood up on, chill bumps or whatnot. 16, it stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying, shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his maker? Now that's a good question, but I don't, that's a little weird. So he had a vision, and a man came to him and says, shall mortal man be more just than God? Or shall a man be more pure than his maker? And then more questions. 18, behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwelt in houses of clay, whose foundations is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from morning to evening. They perish from forever without any regarding it. Doeth not their excellency which is in them go away. They die even without wisdom. And he's still talking about the evil people that perish. A lot of this is so hard to understand.
Summarize number 4.
Summarize number 4?
Yeah, 3 was easy because he just wanted to die. He's questioning being alive.
Well, number 4 is, the summarizing of number 4 is, hey, he comes back at him. Job, you say you want to die, but God's not going to kill an unjust man. You're not. You need to be. You need to be aware that you have sin in your life, and this is why all this is happening. It's pretty much the gist of it. You need to change your ways, repent, do something, because you're going to die if you keep on this track.
So they're rebuking, his friends are rebuking Job.
Yes, his friends are rebuking Job. All this is saying Job.
How do you say that name? Eliphaz.
Eliphaz.
Well, in this
Rebukes
one it
Job.
says-
That's the title from there to on King James Bible study Bible.
But it says,
Sometimes it don't have all the verses down here. Some of the ones that you want to look up for.
We got time. I'll go back and read it out of this one. This is.
but Eliphaz in this, the point here was that because people are not sinless before God, they may expect difficulties in this life, even tragedies and death. People need to acquire godly wisdom in order to live properly before God. And it don't matter how much you think that you are sinless, but before God, you're not sinless.
It's saying the same thing that
Okay.
God knew that he wasn't going to withstand this. He knew that guy, that friend of Job's, if that had been on him and his wife said, "Curse the Lord and die," she said, Job on that song, he'd have said, "Okay, baby, let's get with it cussing him." You see what I'm saying?
And he
This is
probably
the
would have
book
died.
of- And they would have died. I mean, but this is God's way of showing Jesus that this is a truth.
That's where it goes back to just and unjust.
Look, I'm going to go back and read 4 in this. This is a New Living Translation. This will sum it up in a thought. Now you can take this with a grain of salt, but it'll give you a thought. Okay.
It'll give you
Uh,
insight of what's going on.
I would definitely not preach out of this Bible if I was a preacher, but it does give you a thought and kind of explains some of the 400-year-old text that we got. Starting from the front, verse 1. It says, Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied to Job, "Will you be patient and let me say a word? For who could keep from speaking out? In the past you have encouraged many people. You have strengthened those who are weak. Your words have supported those who were failing. You encouraged those who were with shaky knees. But now when trouble strikes you, you lose heart. You are terrified when it touches you. Doesn't your reverence for God give you confidence? Doesn't your life of integrity give you hope? Stop and think. Do the innocent die? When have the upright been destroyed? My experiences show that those who plant trouble and cultivate evil will harvest the same. A breath from God destroys them. They vanish in a blast of his anger. The lion roars and the wild cat snarl, but the teeth of the strong lion will be broken. The fierce lion will starve for lack of prey. The cubs of the lioness will be scattered. This truth was given to me in a secret, as though whispered in my ear. It came to me in a disturbing vision at night, when people are in a deep sleep. Fear gripping me, and my bones trembling, a spirit swept past my face, and my hair stood on end. The Spirit stopped by, but I couldn't see its shape. There was a form before my eyes. In the silence I heard a voice say, "Can a mortal be innocent before God? Can anyone be pure before the Creator?" If God does not trust His own angels and has charged His messengers with foolishness, how much less will He trust people made of clay? Now that makes more sense, don't it? They are made of dust, crushed as easily as a moth. They are alive in the morning, but dead in the evening, gone forever without a trace. Their tent cords are pulled, and their tent collapses, and they die of ignorance. Now I want to go back and talk about 17. I'm going to read it out of here. 17. Shall mortal men be more just than God? And it says, can a mortal man be innocent before God? If you read it out of here, Job didn't have it, but we have someone that makes us innocent before God. That's Jesus. You know, we are as filthy rags before God, but through Jesus, we are able to sit at His foot. Does that make sense? Can anyone be pure before the Creator? No, we can't. On our own, we cannot be pure before the Creator.
That's the song my sister walked out to the ring with. That may be a sign they'd go call her. I mean, I'm not kidding.
God just put it on your heart?
I don't know, I just heard the bad to the bone started up.
21.
All right, now listen. I'm sorry.
This one's so way far off a base. It's so crazy.
So
It's
you're
crazy.
comparing the.
Yeah, I was just
and see,
comparing the
and
two.
that-
There's no comparison.
That gets you so more.
We're trying to understand the story. We're not trying to save people. So I like branching off, trying to figure out what it's saying. But man, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Do we want to try to keep going, or do we want to? I'm not sure what we're going to do. We'll keep reading because this is a lot of just talking. And what's bad is, God at the end of all this, I guess it's probably chapter 38 or something like that. God is fixing to rebuke everything that they have said. All of this right here. He's going to say, why are y'all talking about something that you don't even understand? So, I mean, it's beautiful, I guess. But he point blank tells them, y'all are talking about, things you don't understand. I don't know why. I don't know if we need to really dig into it or go word for word. I don't know if there's.
Digging into it, it's gonna get deep.
It's gonna get deep, but how much of it is something you can stand on? Did you know that soul sleep come from Eliphaz? The soul sleep that the what you call it talk about? What are they? The guys that show up in the white shirts and try to tell you that.
The Jehovah Witnesses.
Yes, Jehovah's Witnesses soul sleep came from the book of Job, and then God sits there and tells them you don't know what you're talking about. So, and they took and made doctrine out of it. That's crazy. We're going to read some of chapter 5 because we still got 10 minutes. Chapter 5 on mine says, righteousness will triumph. Call now if there be any that will answer thee, and to which of the saints wilt thou turn? For wrath killeth the foolish man, and envy slayeth the silly one. I have seen the foolish taking root, but suddenly I cursed his habitation. His children are far from safety, and they are crushed in the gate. Neither is there any to deliver them. Whose harvest the hungry eateth up, and taketh it even out of the thorns, and the robber swalloweth it up, their substance. Now, is Eliphaz talking about his kids here?
Nope. He told Job not to expect help from the saints. The need of a mediator is an important theme in Job 9. He's trying to tell Job that he don't have a mediator between him and God, so the saints ain't gonna help him. So the mediator he's talking about is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's another
And
part.
that's just what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, see, what you just said, what TJ just said, is makes, in your number, 17, that you just said, we have Jesus, which makes us mortal man, and then God, which, do you understand? Now, he just said it that way.
A mediator.
The mediator.
Yeah, well, that's what God, you
Job didn't
out-
have the mediator. He didn't have Jesus Christ to go intercede with him, for him to God.
Why?
Because Jesus Christ wasn't born.
This is the oldest book in the Bible.
I know that,
But
I
see-
know that. But he was a man of God. Right, so
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't born, so,
So he didn't have the mediator to go before God.
no, he went full God himself.
No, he
didn't
went
need
through
me.
sacrifice. That was the Mosaic law.
This was before the laws.
But it was,
This was with the patriarchs. This is what they practiced because of Cain and Abel. Sacrificing for sins. There were Christophorcies.
Jesus walked in heaven.
Oh, absolutely. And in the Old Testament, you've seen a picture of Jesus. When Moses seen the burning bush, that was Jesus.
Right.
Uh,
Talking.
and they call them Christophorcies. Christophorcies.
So
That's
Job
not
was
like-
a man of God.
it's hard.
He didn't need it.
Well, Job ain't even talked to God yet. And this is my whole thing. Job seems to be... Job ain't spoke to God yet. He's
Not during
he's saying...
this, but before God let Satan come, if I'm correct, Satan come. He said, I want to test, put Job under a test. And the Lord said, and God said, okay, he'll stand. I don't believe he'll stand by you. I do. So you can do anything to him you want to, but take his life.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so Job's a
He
man
was
of
testing
God.
the faith and righteousness of Job.
But Job's a man of God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. there-
Abraham was too. He got
We're all
it.
saying the same thing.
Well, what I'm trying to point out is it ain't documented that he has talked to God yet.
That's it.
He has talked out loud so God could hear him, but he
He
ain't.
ain't talked to God yet during what he's going through.
Yeah, right
That's
here.
what you're saying.
Yeah. In a minute, he's going to start talking directly to God, and God's going to answer him.
So let me shut up, but we're all saying the same thing. I mean, he's a man of God, he may not have talked to him yet, because we ain't got that for you yet. After he finds out, oh my goodness.
I'm just wondering why he ain't talking to God already. He's just talking out loud.
because he's like us, it says, okay, I got sinus infection. And then next thing you know, you're in the hospital, you're on your deathbed, because sinus infection will kill you. That is the truth. Anyhow, so you're laying up there and you're like, why did it not come sooner? And God goes, hey, talking to me yet? I mean, you know what? Dear. Oh God, please. You get what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
You didn't come when you should have come sooner. That's why a lot of people, they, you have to walk through something, and I'm one of them.